Hello, my name is Kennedy Lesage. I'm a sophomore at UAB, and today for my historical figure, I'm going to be talking about Fyodor Dostoevsky. Fyodor Dostoevsky is a Russian author who's most popular for his writing of the novel Crime and Punishment. I chose to do him because he actually made a pretty big impact on my life with his novel. Now, by a show of hands, how many of you guys like to read? Not many. I've always personally had a hard time staying interested in books because of my ADHD. My mind tends to wander. But after reading Crime and Punishment, it honestly changed my life and gave me a new perspective on my future, my mental health, and some goals I should have. But before I get into how one of his novels made an impact on me, let's get into some history about him. Dostoevsky was born in 1821 and died in 1881. He was one of 7 children and grew up with a very warm and loving mother and a father who was kind of the exact opposite. He was very cold-hearted and mean. Dostoevsky always had a passion for literature growing up, but was forced to go into the Russian army at a young age. After serving only 2 years, he said screw it and started pursuing his dream of writing. His first published work was called Poor Folk. This novel emphasized mental health of men, which is often overlooked in Russia and here, and in the 1800s was just not accepted of men. After writing Poor Folk, his next hit book was The Double. The Double was a short piece about split personality, and his work was meant to enlighten the Russian people on mental illness again, but this time in an intriguing way. Both novels touched up heavily on the hardships of living in Russia and the corruption with it. After publishing his work, he began having an active role in the New Era Russia. His pieces of work were considered new and radical to some Russians, and to others it was disgusting and unacceptable. He then started publishing articles questioning Russia's politics, knowing everything in Russia was surveillanced by the government itself. The Russians sent him to prison for his writings and ended up giving him the death penalty. When it came time for his execution, they blindfolded him outside and prepared him to be shot. Seconds before he was supposed to be put to death, a messenger came to the guard and granted him life. All of this death penalty was the government's plan to psychologically torture him into thinking he was seconds away from death, just to teach him a lesson. After the death penalty incident, he was sent to Siberia to finish his life sentence. During this time here, he had a reevaluation of life and felt like he was destined to save the Russian people and rebuild the corrupt country. During his time in the pen, he wrote his most famous novel, Crime and Punishment, which I talked about earlier. This book is a psychological analysis of the main character, and I won't say too much about it because I think you guys should really read it, especially if you're dealing with mental health problems. This book of his brought light to my knowledge of existential nihilism and how to overcome it, and showed through the story of how having existential nihilism outlook on life can make you slowly but surely spiral into a dark place. I think Dostoevsky's literature and art gave me a passion for reading, and I hope you guys can get a chance to read some of his novels.